Welcome to South Asian Environment Dialogue. It's a weekly program being brought on by the Climate Channel Canada, as well as with the Plurals India and the NoTP Bangla, a major YouTube channel in Bangladesh. And now in global context, there is no other dialogue other than the dialogue about the COP26, which is literally hours away. I think as we speak, I think we are about 72 hours away from COP26 to start. And that's because there was no COP last year at the backdrop of pandemic. And we all know this COP is a kind of an execution COP. So all eyes on this COP. And also we are going to have a leaders summit at the beginning of it. As of now, whatever I heard, more than 120 country heads are supposed to be there. Indian Prime Minister, US President, and a lot of other global leaders are to be there. So it's really another very big ticket event after Paris. So will it really be a game changer? Or it will basically another effort of the global leaders to push the goalpost back? That's all we are going to discuss, and we are having a fabulous panel to discuss that. I have with me my very good friend, Jaideep Gupta, South Asian Director of Third Pole, one of the premier environment and climate media platform globally. And I don't know how many times he had been part of the COP, and even I think he doesn't know about it. So let's put it this way: there was no COP. Our kind of point person in COP. Whenever we need to know something in the COP, we go to Jaideep. So welcome, Jaideep, to the show.
Thank you.
Now I have with me Aarti Khoshla. Aarti is the director of Climate Trend and also the founder director of Carbon Copy, of a climate specific kind of website, media website. And she has been playing a key role in the last few years on the climate communication front at the COP level and otherwise. So again, I look forward, Aarti, to your contribution in the coming Glasgow COP. Aarti, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Jayanta. Thanks for having me.
Great. I have with me another very good friend of mine. All are very good friends. It's almost like a get-together kind of panel. I have Amitabh Sinha. Amitabh is the resident editor of the Indian Express, Pune, and another one of the senior journalists from India who've been covering COP for a long, long time. Again, we'll be all part of it. Glasgow, the RT-PCR test waiting. So all that had to be there. Welcome, Amitabh, to the show.
Thank you, Jayanta. Thanks a lot.
Great. And I have with me Mullah Amjad Hossain. He's an energy and renewable energy journalist and expert from Bangladesh, also being part of various COPs, also hopefully the next COP as well. And he also edits a very premier energy magazine in Bangladesh. And welcome Amjad Saab to this show. It's really great to have you in the panel.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted with a nice guy like Jaideep, Sheena.
Absolutely. I think another about 40 minutes we'll enjoy the whole thing. Yeah. I have with me Afia Salam. Afia ji she's another very, very senior journalist of the subcontinent, Pakistan. Not only the normal journalism, she's also part of the developmental training and all. So Afia ji, welcome to the show, and I think that very interesting time ahead, and we will have quality discussion down the line. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to
absolutely be here. Pleasure. So without wasting any more time, let me start with Jaideep. Jaideep, let's start with the heading. Is it going to be a game changer? Is it pushing the goalpost or something in between?
Right now, it's pushing the goalpost at every level. It has been pushing the goalpost for months on the net zero issue, with countries coming up with net zero years, target years, at a time when none of these country heads or whoever is making these commitments will be alive to be held to account for the promises they make. And the latest has been another pushback on the very crucial financing front. We have been talking since 2009 December on the promise of the developed world mobilizing $100 billion a year by 2020. and ramping it up throughout the last decade. They failed to do so. They failed to reach $100 billion by 2020. The latest UN report shows that the max, that 2018, which was the latest for which we have figures, they reached $52 billion instead of 100. So they were just about to the halfway mark. And we know now that $100 billion will not be anywhere near enough. And last week, we got this announcement, most unwelcome announcement, that the 2020 deadline has been pushed back to 2023. So there is a fresh trust deficit. And this COP, as a result, is starting on a note that is really more pessimistic than any of the other COPs have come.
That's a very, very interesting point. Thanks, Jaideep. I think you completely opened up the discussion in a very interesting manner. Let me go to Aarti. Aarti, what Jaideep had just said, that this COP has been opened up with a much more pessimist note than the previous COPs. But at the same time, this COP is also starting with a leaders summit. And while many people are saying that leaders summit is not going to be anything more than a photo op, but also others are giving examples that in Paris, such a leaders summit at the beginning finally paved the way for the first of its kind legally binding agreement. So what's your take on that, Aarti? You have been following this whole issue. One side, as Jaideep was pointing out, the pointers that why and how negative they are. Other side, the leaders summit. How you take it?
Well, this is a decisive COP after the Paris Agreement. If Paris Agreement was about creating something, this is about course correcting and putting that agreement in action. So to that extent, it is important. The peripheral sound that gets created with all the efforts that UK government have made to make it sound like the biggest event after the Second World War, that's, I think, a questionable item on how much surround sound have you created to make this a COP that will consign coal to history or that will get net zero pledges. Net zero itself does not cause for any problem. I mean, the issue is that the road to 2050 will actually go from 2030 and 2040. So if countries have credible modeling and credible plans on how they will get to 2050 and how they will traverse through the next decade or so, that brings a lot of trust. And lacking which, the kind of announcements that have recently come from Australia, for example, which comes without any modeling, not bode well for the discussions. It just feels that there are some countries who are doing that modeling, including India, and still there is hesitation to announce the long-term targets, but things are in the works. In terms of what the Leaders Summit will deliver, I would only say that climate action is no more a question of policy or regulation or even science. Those things have been told enough and have been said enough. And if the question is political will, then you do need the world leaders to come at a stage and commit to a certain visionary future. And more than anything else, I mean, whether it is net zero or it is climate action, it does call for transformative policies at every level, and which is why it becomes tricky. Net zero is just not about committing to a renewables target. It is about transforming agriculture, about industry, about transport, and the fact that it is such an interconnected web creates all the more responsibility on leaders to know what they're saying. And I feel that anything that gets said in the Leaders Summit to that extent will be of value, but it should be weighed against some kind of credibility and legitimacy of what is said.
Actual outcome that comes out of it. Yes, I think absolutely. I think absolutely very well put. And I would like to bring Amitav here for the kind of... So Amitav, Aarti was just talking about the transformative policies and other things. Right now, I think last couple of days, we are having a series of reports coming up as it happens before every COP. You have the emission gap report, which says that whatever being committed in Paris is not good enough. It's not the first time it's being said. I think for the last few years, I have seen the same report that it's not good enough. There should be more ambition than what right now there are. Now, today, there is a G20 report has come up, which is showing the G20 countries are extremely vulnerable, India included, the top of the list. Now, with all this context, how you feel, somebody who has been covering COP for a long, long time, all these reports, do they really matter when it comes to negotiation, or it's just a peripheral noise, as Arti was talking about?
Well, I think they do. A lot of what goes on at these COPs is based on science and science evidence. Now, you can always argue that it's not enough, and it's probably true as well. So it actually comes down to whether you want to see the glass half full or half empty. Absolutely. And it's actually the case. Now, the thing is, these COPs, these series of meetings for the last, 30 years, almost 25, 26 years, what they have done is they have brought the climate to the top of global agenda. They have actually forced climate action on a lot of countries. Almost everyone now realizes that this is the biggest problem. There's no running away from it. Also, the fact that most of the countries, in whatever ways, are taking action. So that ways you can say, okay, these series of meetings have done something. They have done something concrete towards whatever science says needs to be done. But again, if you compare it with what science has been arguing, and in a way, these reports that come out before the COP, they reflect the scientific opinion, then you can always argue that, look, whatever needed to be done according to science, that has never been done. So absolutely, we have never been doing adequately enough. And therefore, we are perennially sort of locked into this thing wherein we are just able to barely keep our noses above water, or maybe even not even that, because we are already seeing the impacts of climate change all across the world. So it's not something that is there to be avoided. It's already there with us. We are already experiencing it. So avoidance is actually out of the window now. We are not going to avoid climate change. It's very much there. We are already experiencing the worst effects. All that we are trying to do is to somehow prevent it from getting worse. How much worse will it get depends on how quick or how ambitious actions that we are able to take.
That's the point.
That's the only thing that is remaining. On the Leader Summit, I just wanted to say, I mean, sure, since you made that point, Leaders Summit have happened twice earlier. Once in Copenhagen, it did not work out. Once in Paris, it worked out. So it's average. Also, the fact that in Copenhagen, leaders had come at the end of the summit, didn't work out. In Paris, they came right at the start. They come
at the beginning.
It worked out, but I mean, in Paris, it was not because of the Leaders Summit, frankly. I mean, the success of the Paris Agreement was mainly because they seriously did a lot of groundwork in the intervening years. If that groundwork happens during the rest of the year, when the COPs, between the COPs, then it becomes easier for the COP. You don't really expect negotiators to be able to handle all or resolve all the issues within a 2-week period.
So you feel that this time, as you said, 1-1, but this time with the model of Paris being replicated, so you're hopeful that something may come out of it. Something I can see Jaideep is not really fully agreeing with that, and come back to Jaideep on that front. But before that, to both Bangladesh and Pakistan, let me start with Bangladesh and then I'll come back to Pakistan. See, I am coming to Bangladesh for a specific reason. Jaideep was talking about it, and Amitabh, Aarti, all talking about it. There are so much impacts being happening everywhere, especially in South Asia. And now Bangladesh is also facing the brunt of climatic impacts. At the same time, if I'm not wrong, Bangladesh is the chair of Vulnerability Forum at this point of time. So what do you think for the issue like loss and damage, the climate liability? What's your expectation in the coming COP?
Look, things are not getting easy, but my feelings is that no COP is failed. Actually, every COP we received something. Last 3 decades of climate negotiation, every day we receive something. I hope the COP26 will deliver some, but mainly it can finalize the Paris rulebook, especially the Article 6, and loss and damage. It's another big issue. Actually, the polluters, especially the developed country, they are not agreed a lot of things on these regards. But after the consensus of COP25, the network form, and maybe on this regard, this COP can start a secretariat and start to work on these regards. But it's a big negotiation point still, loss and damage. And you mentioned already that disaster, not only the third world country like South Asian country or Asian country, India, Bangladesh, nowadays the climate disaster is affected all over the world, all the countries, Germany, USA, and all the countries suffering.
So you expect the issue like loss and damage to be discussed and be coming into the prominence during
I think that the loss and damage issue can get new momentum in COP26.
Yes. So, I have a question that will come back to Jaideep later after I spoke to you. As far as loss and damage being clubbed with adaptation, does it really make sense, and can it take it forward? But before that, to Hafia, you've been covering environment and climate change for quite some time, and the scenario that we are right now in, say for Pakistan, what kind of expectation Pakistan is going to? Say India is different. India is a big country. India has its issues, the positives and negatives and everything. But what kind of expectation Pakistan has from a summit like Glasgow?
Thank you. So it's very important also, to frame the question more in a South Asian context.
Sure.
Because as it is, it's not a country which is being represented at the COP. These are groups. And we are in a group.
Hopefully it could have been a stronger group.
Oh, well, hopefully. But you see, in our group, we have the countries which are being impacted and countries which do impact. So it's a very, sort of a tightrope walking as far as this group is concerned. But what I want to point out is, we've had, and Amitabh actually took my lines when he said, okay, we've had these leaders summit before. And I was going to refer to Copenhagen, which was the big thing, the huge buzz at that time. And it didn't really get us much. So, but Paris did, and of course, because everything was dependent on the biggest country to actually pull its weight, the country walked out, and Paris also sort of fizzled out until last election of the US. So being dependent on the mutterings of the leaders summit, I think we need to take it with a pinch of salt, because there is a lot of politics, there is a lot of optics, and many of the leaders who make those commitments over there are actually addressing their own constituencies as well, not just the global platform. And maybe that is the reason why they actually retract. The other thing that we need to also remember that at this COP, now we didn't have one last year, but the NDCs are being revised. Many countries have revised their NDCs from what they submitted, and they've brought forward their own global, the emissions targets. They brought them for their targets forward. Yet the scientists have sounded a warning that, we are not going to, let alone 1.5, we are going beyond 2 in any case.
Absolutely.
So when you look at that in the context of what Joydeep pointed out in the first, in his opening statement, earlier, the commitment was that, yes, we will provide the bigger countries, the polluters, as well as the richer countries. Let's not just, tag them as polluters only. They are the countries with the resources who had promised a pot of money to help the other countries reach certain targets, as well as to adapt, not just mitigate. There's very little mitigation our countries can do.
And the target was created by them only.
Exactly.
$100 billion
pot of money was created by them, but it wasn't. Yeah.
Hillary Clinton, I can remember, first talked about it. Jaideep, I think Hillary Clinton first talked about it in Copenhagen. Then it actually ratified in Cancun. So it's not that the smaller countries or the other countries
talked about it.
It
was something that was,
yes.
The other thing is that it isn't only the money that was promised. It was the technology transfer.
Sure.
Yes, I agree with both those things. Yes, in many places they are in tandem. If the countries like ours, they need technology to, jumpstart onto the newer technologies, which we can phase out our fossil fuel and other emitting technologies. But that hasn't come through either. So those things, those commitments have not come through, and the onus is still so much on the global South to pull through and sort of cap their development. And loss and damage was something which Mr. Salimul Haq from Bangladesh actually spoke about at Warsaw. So COP19, and now we are at 26, and he has been pushing it, and he needs to be provided that kind of, impetus and support from the other countries, because that is what will work. Adaptation cannot happen in a vacuum. Adaptation cannot happen without the support of the other countries as well.
In fact, the loss and damage was, I think, if my memory goes right, there was a committee that drafted it, and Hassan Mahmood Saab, who was the current cultural minister of Bangladesh, then environment minister of Bangladesh, actually was a pioneer behind framing the loss and damage to start with. That's it. Thank you. Come back to that. But then, Jaideep, I'll ask you about the outcomes you expect at this point of time. But before that, another very quick response from you regarding the Leaders Summit. Amitabh says it's one all. Copenhagen towards the end failed. Paris at the beginning succeeded. Might be they are kind of replicating the model. But I think it is my experience by covering COP, and I think all of you will definitely agree, that first 7 days, apart from the lengthy discussions and putting the brackets and full stops and commas, not really full stops, they don't do anything else. It seems that if the leaders come at the top and give some kind of a direction, then the bureaucrats might be kind of putting it up in a quicker mode. So don't you think that it's a model in any way should be replicated in the COP? Some to start with, something to push, and then perhaps take it from there. Jaideep?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm all for this World Leaders Summit at the beginning rather than at the end, because what happened in Copenhagen was that, people like Obama and Manmohan Singh and Xi Jinping and the Brazilian head and the South African head actually had to get into the commas and full stops of the negotiations.
Absolutely.
So if you force them to do that, because the others have not managed, then they just don't have the time to do it. Anyway, that's not their job.
Yeah.
Their job is to give the negotiators an overall direction that go in this direction. No negotiator is going to make any commitment without consulting his capital. That's obvious.
Yeah.
They will not do it. That's Absolutely. Not how negotiations happen. But if they're given an overall direction at the beginning of the negotiations process, and as Amitabh very correctly pointed out, the French did a wonderful job of this throughout the year 2015. So that by the time the COP started in Paris, negotiators already had an overall mandate from their political leaders to reach an agreement. Okay,
what are the red lines? What are the red lines? How far we can go?
Yeah, the details are still to be worked out. Remember that. We still haven't finalized the Paris Agreement rulebook. And as Aarti pointed out, that is a major part of this COP26 agenda. And like Aarti, I'm quite hopeful that we will finally manage to finalize the Paris Agreement rulebook at this COP, and that will be a major accomplishment. There's no doubt about it. So as far as the process is concerned, this COP will be a success.
I hope you are not joking.
I'm not joking at all. I do expect the Paris Agreement rulebook to be, if not finalized, but almost finalized. There are always so many slips between the cup and the lip that I'm scared to saying it will be finalized, but I'm hopeful about that. And that will be a major achievement. And there is, given the situation.
What are the major outcomes you expect?
the Paris Agreement will finally be able to get off the ground and be implementable, and the various articles will then start being applicable, and people can start putting up projects on the basis of those. So that is solid achievement. Where
finance, loss and damage.
Yeah, that is the problem. So you get the Paris Agreement rule book done, but the lack of political push and what we have been hearing over the last couple of weeks especially is that finance may not work. And if finance doesn't work,
nothing
how
works.
does Paris Agreement work? People don't have money. Loss and damage, I'm actually very cynical about about anything new coming out of loss and damage. I mean, I really wish it would, but I'm not hopeful.
But a lot of noise has been made by the civil society and the specific island countries and others about the loss and damage leading to the COP. So there are a lot of noises being made, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And they have every right to make that noise. They're facing loss and damage. We are facing loss and damage. The US is facing loss and damage. Northern Europe is facing loss and damage. Look at the floods in Germany this summer. Look at, so everybody is facing loss and damage. But we're still not talking about it.
So I understand where the whole thing is going on. So, Aarti, what Jaydeep was just talking about, that realistically, he's saying that the completion of Paris rulebook is something which he really expects. Maybe some development on finance, maybe something may not be even Jaydeep is that not being helpful. So, but let's take a other side of it. If the world has to understand that they need to really cut the emission, need to have more ambition about emission cut, what are the red lines, Aarti, you feel that what can actually kind of push the discussion off in the coming COP? What are the red lines you feel can emerge?
Well, actually, the COP is not a World Cup final, that it will just, in the end, you will have a winner and somebody has made a boundary and that's how it will be.
But you have long tiebreakers, Aarti. But you have long tiebreakers.
Exactly. It's a very dirty process and I think it's been made very fancy, but a lot of the devil lies in the details and that devil never gets addressed in the end. It's clear the way the UK government is pushing for any kind of agreement on Article 6, which means that you do something at this moment which has loopholes and create a structure for market-based mechanism or carbon market, but you go ahead and do it. And that is their push. The problem with that is, how do you bring the older Kyoto unit from that regime to the new one? How do you make room for corresponding adjustments? Do you start a regime which allows for cheating? That, a private company can also claim the credits and the government can also claim those credits till the time you put your house in order. These are all the issues that are being discussed on carbon markets, and Article 6 is important. Finance, I don't want to say anything on apart from saying that climate finance will always be just notional and symbolic, and I think it is like that. It's right for India to pick up that cause because we must, and in the spirit of equity and also in the spirit of everything fair share and not shifting the goalpost, somebody has to say that what needs to be done should have been done. And I think to that extent, talking about the unmet goals on finance is a fair point. And at least from our point of view, that's how we will reflect our discussions on equity as well. But other than that, the red lines really will...
Coal?
That's what I was about to say. The red lines have been made to be the big buzz on net zero and big buzz on days like Energy Day and Finance Day and oil and gas deal and the methane deal, where you come up with renewed pledges on either ending subsidies for coal, oil and gas or not building any further coal, oil and gas. My only feeling on that is that with the way India has expanded 450 gigawatts and coal will anyway languish. Whether or not you have to sign a deal for coal, states are already going away from coal. So the question is, how much pressure do you put on something which is already on the...
So you said the market will take care of it.
The market will take care of it, and the market will take care for a lot of it. On 2nd of November, they are doing the first of its kind forest deal, what I heard, which is kind of unprecedented. The deal has indigenous people at its heart. They're also putting some money behind providing finance to indigenous people, making sure that deforestation is disincentivized, and putting some finance for afforestation. Now, even for countries like Brazil, Indonesia, I don't know what's the deal for India on this one, but just even having some kind of a proper deal on forest in the end is not a bad thing. But just that in the core parts of the negotiation, the things that are mostly discussed as red lines is all the stuff on ambition, which includes net zero and coal, everything on finance, everything on loss and damage, and carbon
What do
markets.
we expect on net zero? What do we expect on net zero? Some countries have announced it, some countries haven't. So do you feel that there will be any kind of comprehensive output on net zero? May not be.
No guesses. I feel there is no value left anymore in net zero. I mean, if somebody can announce a net zero for 2060, anybody can announce it at any point. These are countries that are deeply entrenched in fossil fuels. And, it's just a question of how the market will transform itself, and the whole world will be net zero. There is no debate on it anymore.
No debate on that. I'll come to the kind of Amitabh on that, but quickly back and forth to Jaideep, just a kind of very quickly, because the RT has raised the net zero issue. See, every COP is sometimes we do feel that the developed countries have a strategy to bring something out of the bag and kind of put the entire emerging economy and developing countries into that. You see that you sometimes somewhere it comes up. Now, after John Biden became the president, suddenly he became super active in the global climate negotiation, geopolitics, and have a summit, brought the net zero up, putting pressure on the countries to come up with the net zero kind of target, 2050, 2060, who knows the world will be there or not. And so you feel this is another strategic component or part of the developed countries to put the actual real discussions on hold.
Yes, of course. Of course, that's obvious. I think that's now obvious to everybody. You're basically shifting the goalpost. So if you are saying that, oh, I'll go to net zero by 2050, then I would like to know your detailed roadmap on how you're going to get it. And so some roadmaps are coming out. US has brought out a roadmap. Some of the EU countries have brought out a roadmap. But Australia, for example, has not yet brought out a detailed roadmap.
Although these are not legally binding. When I'm announcing a net zero, it's my country announcing it. So if tomorrow I say that I cannot do this,
nothing is legally binding. Look at the Kyoto Protocol. When countries walked out to the Kyoto Protocol, what happened to them? Nothing happened. So these are basically words of honor because this is international. So there is no Supreme Court. International Court of Justice cannot do anything about it.
But Jaideep, you can always say a pandemic. You can always say a global recession on economy. I so much want to do that.
And it may be said in future. You never know.
Fine. Very quickly to Amitabh. Amitabh, let's very quickly go to the India's position. You've been following the Indian kind of government's whole process in climate negotiation till this era of Congress and now UP out, NDA and all that. We know that India has a very aggressive solar plan. Definitely, there's no two ways about it. But apart from that, what India can gain in this Glasgow and where they can actually maybe having some problems. What's your take on India, Amitabh?
I don't think anyone is gaining anything big time out of this conference anymore. See, the thing is now this COP, it's very useful in certain ways. It's useful in getting everyone together to find some of the solutions to facilitate action on some of the things. But as I talked earlier as well, it's not going to be adequate. Now, the thing is, whatever comes out of this COP or subsequent COPs, I think we should only treat it as some amount of base action. that this amount of minimum action would happen. A lot of other actions would need to happen in the countries themselves, based on their own economic interests and foreign interests, foreign policy interests, how they see it. And that's how, I mean, realistically speaking, frankly, we are dealing with, because these are all sovereign countries and we have seen it earlier as well, you can't force any country to do anything. The Kyoto Protocol was supposed to be legally binding. Nothing happened, right? And this is not even legally binding. Every country only does what they think they are best capable of. Frankly, only those climate actions will happen, realistically speaking, which offer some amount of economic incentive to the country concerned, right? Which now means is that every country is onto themselves. Right? Whatever we commit to COP and whatever every country commits to COP, that's a completely separate story. That's nowhere commensurate to what is required. And nobody is doing charity here. No country would ever do charity. That, okay, I have to save the planet and therefore let me do more than what others are doing. Nobody would do it. There is very clear-cut history, and logic also says, why would anyone do it? So every country would be on their own. People would need to do things which are there in their economic interests and,
basically what Amitabh was saying, that market will take over. Market will predominantly take over the climate actions.
That is the best way to facilitate action also, because and it's not just about market. For example, what I'm saying is there were practices that probably used to be ignored earlier, but because there is so much of consciousness about climate change, and also the need to, the realization that if you don't do it well, you are going to lose in the long run. For example, if you're doing the highway program, for example, in India, or you are setting up power plants, a few years earlier, probably you would not be thinking about, making it disaster proof, disaster resilient, or make it resilient against the cyclones.
But now you
would do it because there is an incentive.
Your money is at stake. Your money is at stake.
Every cyclone is actually leading to lots and lots of economic damage. So once that sense gets,
I understand the point that you're making, but my only hunch, but Amitabh, my only kind of, I really support you that market has to be a player. But only point is, market only operates where there is a profit. In several climate change issues, there are no issue of profit. So if you just give it fully to the market, then there will be a lot of marginalized people, marginalized issues, which may be having a lot of problems. So that's where I think a regulated market you need.
That's exactly what I'm saying. This is not just about market, and it's not the kind of market that we see. I'm saying there is already a consciousness has crept in. There is no doubt about it, right? Once that, now how do you go about spending money, creating new infrastructure, or doing things in a manner that is consistent with climate change objectives? Countries will do on their own. They can't be forced to do that. I don't think you would ever be able to do that. Even a small country to do something.
Amitabh, in one line, any kind of whatever we already know about India's proclaim about the climate actions and the NDCs and all, anything dramatic you expect? Prime Minister is going and, any dramatic announcement you expect?
They'll make the usual noises about finance. It's not going to come in any case, not just to India, but I don't think huge amount of finance.
Any announcement about net zero, about revised NDC or something?
They have made it very clear they are not going to take a net zero target.
Yes, I think
for them it doesn't even make any sense, which is
very quickly. We have about 10 minutes time. Have a quick one round, and then first let me go to Pakistan. Afia, Pakistan's point of view. You already discussed that. What's your take? That Pakistan, any kind of specific red lines for Pakistan? Any specific demands that you feel Pakistan will raise in the COP? Very quickly.
So like I said, Pakistan is not a country itself over there to raise any kind of demands only for itself. Obviously, it's part of a group. But on its own, like Pakistan has submitted its revised NDCs and it has committed a 50% reduction by 2030, of which, again, like you see, this is like all the other participants have been pointing out, these are voluntary. And these are conditional. There are unconditional and conditional, and things may happen. We are at number 5 on the vulnerability scale. If some kind of a disaster hits us, where it can just throw everything out of sync, all the intents, not the commitments, but even the intent of those commitments, they may just go out of sync. So the South Asian countries, which are high on the vulnerability scale, they also have to battle with those things. It's not just what we put out. And when you don't see any kind of assistance coming in, you spoke about, I think Joydeep said about the civil society, you mentioned it. That is one voice I have a feeling will be missing at this COP, because for COVID, the restrictions, the vaccine, and allow me to use the word apartheid because many countries are using that word now, that the marginalized countries do not have the resources and they will be left out. The civil society organizations will not be a very strident voice, which they have been at some of the other COPs. When I was at Warsaw, I think it was just after the cyclone in Philippines, you had a very strong contingent over there. So those kind of voices, and if you let only the market forces decide what's going to be happening in the world, yes, the conversation about net zero is good. I totally agree with Amitabh that, the conversation from each COP has brought in some progress, because you become more aware of the science, you become more sensitized, and countries have been shifting. So the corporate sector now knows that net zero is a profitability factor there.
So
because
the
you have to comply. Yeah, so they will do that, not because of the goodness of the heart, not because of the love for the planet.
I understand.
But the marginalized people still will not be able to get their voice in, So that is what my issue is as a communications person.
No, Afia, only question is that I know that every COP, there is some progress, definitely. So many global leaders, experts are meeting. There is bound to be some progress. But the point is, will we keep on kind of chasing the bus? At some point in time, we'll get onto the bus. That's a big question need to be responded to. And let me go to Mullah Abjad Saab. See, you yourself been covering renewable energy a lot. Now, Amjad Saab, India is definitely all said and done. I think one plus is India is really. But other part of South Asia, do you feel that there are enough being kind of probe on the renewable energy, Mullah Saab?
Thank you. Give me the chance again. I actually pointed out one more thing. In the context of Bangladesh, Bangladesh already submitted the revised NDC, the target enhanced, and we already finalized Mujib Climate Prospective Plan. There is a target 40% from the non-carbonized energy by 2041. And our Prime Minister in the Leaders Summit, she stated a 6-point demand. Bangladesh already taken initiative on it, and she placed her request to other leaders to make such plan for this country. And you mentioned the renewable energy progress. Yes, India is a huge country. They have a lot of scope. You have solar, you have wind, you have biomass. But in the context of Bangladesh, we're trying to put some grid-connected solar. Now, right now, our grid-connected solar is very few, only around 200 megawatt. Some 1,000 more megawatt are coming up. But we have constant of land, constant of investment, and we don't have any hopeful wind prospect here. But study going on, and some Indian company also doing work here. But another point, I think the recent things all over the world, the energy price enhance and fossil fuel crisis in all over the Europe, the host country, Britain, North America, everywhere. And this scenario, I thought the process to going out from fossil fuel, it can delay. You know, Europe, China, even UK, they are trying to getting more fossil fuel for their future energy security. No country, just the Amitabh already mentioned, we need business case. So no country come with the voluntary things. We need,
no freelance. No freelance out there. Even
freelance,
no free breakfast even.
Nobody ready to compromise their development plan or other things.
Business, even the Airbnbs are not giving breakfast. So forget about the lunch, not to say about the breakfast. Very quickly, we have come to the almost end of it. About 5 minutes we have. Very quickly, I'll start with Aarti and then very quickly pull through. So the geopolitics is playing a very important role. I think we mentioned about John Biden, the US factor. In this COP, during the negotiation, US coming back after a long, long time. And now that China is also, they are playing a big role, the biggest emitter. So China, US, and of course the European Union and the basic countries. Very quickly, US and China factor, how much important it is going to be in this COP. Aarti, let's start with Aarti.
You know, like Amitabh said, before the Paris Agreement, there were meetings that had happened a year before. And there was the US-China summit that happened before where it was agreed what will happen. If that kind of thing would have happened, to give in the quid pro quo, it's not a game where everybody is stopping on ambition and you are building up a whole sum like that. It is really looking at the lowest common denominator. And if that be the case, it is not, ambition is a dichotomous understanding in that way.
And always you tend to see that they take out the cards as late as possible to make sure that others cannot respond to that in a proper manner. So it's a very kind of a different game. Amitabh, let's bring a devil's advocate very quickly if you respond. See, on the one side, we have been all discussing the negatives and skepticism that comes up, the COP can deliver. Other side, a lot of global leaders are going to Scotland, SEC Center, Glasgow, with kind of something in their back. US president has something to do globally to kind of regain his global position after this Afghanistan thing. Indian Prime Minister has a lot to do in context to the kind of global scenario that India right now in. There are others as well. So do you think that that can be actually acting a positive? They really need to show the world that we need to do something. Will that act?
You yourself said it. They are going there for various different reasons, not for saving the planet, isn't it? So
yes. So, but will that act in saving the planet?
See, frankly, as Aarti also said, this is only one part of the action. This is not to say COP doesn't have a utility. COP is, as I said earlier as well, COP has delivered something. It's very useful. But what we would see in COP is only part of the action. Countries would only put forward what, number one, what they would be able to achieve, and not just that, what they will probably be able to overachieve in the kind of system that we have now, right? So that would only be part of the action. A lot of action is happening outside of the COPs, and that will continue to happen because of completely different reasons, because of either economic reasons, because of strategic reasons, because of foreign policy reasons. So a lot of that action, which probably is not getting added up. Again, I would say probably all of them put together might also not be sufficient, according to what science says. But what we are seeing in COP and the kind of things, promises that would be made at the COP is just one part of the larger pie. There's a lot of action happening outside as well. Okay, and those are also important.
Very interesting that on COP and off COP, and then you kind of tend to see how they kind of go together.
I mean, like countries like India or any other country, for example, they are doing, 35 different other things also, but you put only 3 of those promises in your NDC, isn't it? Because those are your highlights. But those are not the only things that you are doing. You are doing several other things.
You are doing other things as well. Absolutely. But at the same time, COPs are kind of signature events that
they are very useful. They are very
direct
useful.
you the action plan, what you do throughout the year. It's a kind of direction you are giving to the global South and global North to how to go about it. So that's very important. Very quickly, we have just a minute away. Let me start with Afia perhaps, and then to Amjad Saab. Very quickly on geopolitics, anything you would like to add on that, Afia, on geopolitics?
You see, COP has to be seen in the context of geopolitics, plus the science that that is brought together over there. So sometimes those sideline events are bringing out such important things that will probably be part of the negotiations at the next COP. You have these cutting edge things that are, revealed at the side events, which I think should be paid a lot of importance to. Plus, we have the other COPs also. There's a COP on biodiversity and other things. It's a collection of so many things. But of course, the focus is on the negotiations, and that is focused on emissions since Paris. So I think we also need to take in the bigger picture in point, and also the good geopolitics also is because most of these negotiations are driven by your foreign offices.
Absolutely.
It's not the environmentalists who are driving these, these negotiations. It's the foreign office which is driving.
And logically, it has to be there. Without the foreign policy, you really cannot talk about the country's policy in a global platform.
I mean, I don't think it's different for other. I'm not sure. I could be wrong, but I know that's how it is in my country, because it's not only the environmentalists who are
no. Same for all. Same for all. What our environment minister is going to talk about needs to be ratified at the none less than the prime minister and perhaps the senior ministers of the cabinet. So very important. Amjad Saab, last day I was talking to Salimul Haq, and he was saying that I am actually targeting the COP22, which is going to be a vulnerability COP, and which is going to be a COP where the issues of the kind of developing countries and others will be prioritized. So it means that he has almost completely thought that is not going to happen. So very quickly, geopolitics. This COP.
Geopolitics is there. Mr. Amitabh rightly pointed out there is a lot of issue in global leaders. So they solve it in different forum or different action. Yes, but I expect global leaders, especially those countries, really mean something to motivate the world policy. They can maybe deliver some good intention towards finance, but still there is a big debate. It's addition to FDA.
Big debate and bigger confusion. Big debate and bigger confusion from where the money will come. I think great discussions we had for another 45 minutes, 50 minutes. So I'll conclude with what just Afia was talking about, that geopolitics and science both need to be given importance at any global deliberation of this scale. The COP is a real big scale, big ticket global deliberation. But unfortunately, it should have been geopolitics plus science. It has now become geopolitics versus science. Yeah. So that is something not going to take the world forward. And so I think from the media point of view, we all cover COP. We've been all covering for a long time. I think we need to keep our finger crossed that how it is going to kind of, this particular COP is going to all about. Because all said and done, the Paris Protocol, Paris Agreement was supposed to be implemented on ground from 2020. And now it has been, we didn't have anything on 2020. So 2021, we are going to have this COP. So all said and done, and as Amitabh, Jaideep, and Aarti, and everybody was putting up, said, seriously, you can see the disasters all around, not only Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, but globally. So clearly some pressure being built up on the leadership as well. I hope the pressure is being built up. So we all hope that pressure will actually translate into something tangible. We often see that they are not, but I hope that we all hope that. And let's our finger crossed. Let's meet at the sidelines of Glasgow and take this discussion forward. As of today, thank you for your time, and you can conclude here. Thank you.
Thank you
very much. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.